There we go. Recording in progress. Another episode of the Square and Compass podcast. Uh, Back in one of my, well, virtually, anyways, back in one of my favorite states, one state I never visited until I started the podcast, till I started traveling around. The great state of Texas was the most worshipful Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Texas, Most Worshipful Brother Brad Billings. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. My honor to be here.
So, I want to start with a phrase that I've never heard before, that you introduced me to. Um, the phrase, the idea, servant leadership. That's something I saw in practice. I saw you practicing, though I didn't have the name for it, when I visited Texas most recently in Gonzales.
Mm-hmm.
And, I noticed, for example, when we were preambulating or marching to, for example, to go to lunch or to go down the road to the memorial, you'd be at the front, as most worshipful should be, but then when you got to wherever it is, you'd hold the door as Masons, wives, friends, all entered whatever building we're going into. You seem to really, and another brothers mentioned this to me about you. You always seemed to be interested in those little touches and those little signs of respect for the people there, even Canadians, and you described that to me as servant leadership. So what is servant leadership, and how are some of the ways that you attempt to practice it, or you do practice it as a Grand Master?
Yeah, like a lot of things, I don't consider myself the expert, and it's been around a lot longer than myself. I do look for opportunities to be a servant leader and to show that servant leadership. And I've told my entire team, all my district deputies, to be servant leaders, but I've also given them specific ways to do that. So holding a door open, picking up a plate, if you see a brother that's struggling standing up, go grab him a chair. It's symbolic for me, particularly in this station, to say, even if you're Grand Master, it doesn't matter. We're all still brothers. We're all still here to serve one another, to serve the craft and do what's best. But for me, like holding the door open, that just means I get to see everybody coming in the door, and I get to greet them and say hi. So for me, it's kind of like I enjoy doing that type of stuff because it's unexpected, but it's also, for me, it's a treat. So I'm not the expert. I believe in it very heavily. I believe that we should, be here to serve one another rather than no eminence of station makes you above, helping out your brother, basically.
And that's something that I think was clear on my most recent trip to Texas and in Gonzales, right? You saw that attitude amongst the brethren of Gonzales Lodge, amongst the Grand Lodge officers there, right? It's this desire to be of service to one another, and the history of Gonzales Lodge is being of service to that community, right? It's such an important part of the history of Gonzales, Texas, and that's something else that a lot of brothers mentioned to me about you. The encouraging Freemasonry to be active in the community, to be seen, to be visible, right? Like you had us march, preambulate from the lodge to the memorial, from the memorial to grab lunch. Like the emphasis on that visibility, not just Mason to Mason, but Mason to community, right? Where is the emphasis from that coming from? Like, is that a Texas thing? Is that something you're trying to bring in as Grand Master this year? Kind of the emphasis on being visible in the communities you're part of?
To me, people talk about all the time membership, and we're declining in membership and this, that, and the other. And they say we have a membership problem. For me, it's always been, it's not a membership problem per se. It's really a perception problem. People don't know we exist in a lot of communities and a lot of places. And part of the reason is we meet behind closed doors. We market to other Masons, but we don't market our fraternity outside of itself. And that's a real problem. So when you have something that's simple, like the town of Gonzales, where it like doubles or triples in size for the Come and Take It celebration, you've got all these people milling about town, and we could go get in our cars and drive 2 miles down the road, which is that's a real Texas thing to do. And then just meet up at the next place. Or, we could just get together and march there. It wasn't a couple of miles. What was it, like? I don't know, maybe half a mile. And the amount of looks that we got, the amount of people that were, taking note of who are these guys. If they were there that night, they probably know the Masons are alive and well, because we had a nice procession, as we call it here in Texas. So we started that kind of right at the beginning of the year. We started doing processions because we wanted to practice for the Alamo, and that was the largest one that we had this year. We had 960 Masons march in procession, grand procession, from the Scottish Rite, which is about 3.5 blocks away, to the Alamo. And you want to talk about making an impact? Have 960 guys march down the street of San Antonio. I mean, we literally shut streets down. And so what you saw in Gonzales was a smaller version of that, but still the emphasis is the same. Is like, Masonry is alive and well, and here we are. We're not hiding behind closed doors. We're out here in the public, doing public good and doing public service. So that was definitely an emphasis. I don't think it's been done to that extent in the past, but it's very simple to do. We already had the guys there. We were already assembled. Just form a grand procession and march to where we're going, rather than walk, randomly, or get in your cars and drive. So it made sense to me.
And I think to a certain extent that probably connects to one of the things you talk about in your remarks, your address on the Grand Lodge of Texas's website, right? I'll leave a link to it in the comments. The importance of being willing to try new things and try different things and give something a shot, whether it works or it doesn't work. Just that emphasis on trying something slightly different, right? Doing a procession instead of driving there, or, going, European trip, whatever it might be, right? I really liked that, because I think, I don't speak for any Grand Lodge or anything like that. I speak for myself, but I'll speak about Ontario. One of the things that always concerns me about Freemasonry Ontario amongst the membership is sometimes a hesitancy to want to try something different or want to try something new. And I really appreciated what you said in your address, your remarks, right? You got to be willing to try different things, and not everything will succeed, but if you try 10 things and one of them succeeds, at least you've tried.
And down the road, we try 10 things, one thing's work. We retain the things that work, and we, get rid of the things that don't work. Over time, we're going to have 10 things that work, and that's the idea. My mentor was Leonard Harvey. He was past Grand Master in 1989. A large reason for where I am today, particularly at a younger age. But he had a saying, because he would do these workshops, and people were afraid to answer the questions. He would propose a question people wouldn't want to answer because they didn't want to be wrong. They didn't want to try something different and not knock it out of the park. So he said, come on, guys, not every armadillo makes it across the road. That's a very Texas saying, but some armadillos try to cross the road and they get smashed by a car, and that's just the way life is. But some of them make it across. So that was his saying, is not every armadillo makes it across the road. And it resonated with our guys, and they started to kind of come out of their comfort zone. They started to, answer the questions and just go for it. And so that's kind of how I've tried to approach my year, is that not every armadillo is going to make it across the road, but, we've got to start trying some new things. We've got to start trying to appeal to the younger generations, or else we're going to continue in this decline that we've been in for some time. And what really amazes me is the flip side of that. I understand the hesitancy to try new things, but when you see that something has not worked for decades and decades and decades, and you continue it, that's the definition of insanity, is to, know that it doesn't work and just to continue to try to do it. I forget the quote, but I'm sure you guys know what I'm saying. You've got to switch it up. And like, for instance, the processions, some of the things that we've done, it's not earth shattering. It's just tweaking it a little bit. We were already there. We were already doing that. We've been doing the Gonzales celebration for over 100 years. Just tweak it just a little bit, make it interesting, make it fun. And that will hopefully draw in more people, a little at a time, at least.
the hesitancy to the hesitancy to cross the road, basically the hesitancy to try something new. In my experience, as someone who has advocated for trying new things and sometimes found myself squashed in the road and sometimes makes it across.
That makes two of us, brother.
Yeah, it's sometimes you're the one that makes it, sometimes you're the one that doesn't. But one thing I found is I used to think that like the hesitancy to try something new was always based on kind of one particular thing. Like it was just a fear of trying something new, fear of crossing the road. And kind of in my Masonic journey, I found that there's usually a lot of different reasons or causes behind that hesitancy, right? In some cases, it's a matter of burnout. The 10% rule, right? Guys you may have very active Masons, but they're so busy, they don't want to try something new just out of fear that it's going to be something else to their plate. Sometimes, so there can be a burnout element. Sometimes it can be that they tried something similar in the past, it didn't work, so now they feel burned and they don't want to retry, right? Sometimes it can be just a fear of failing and fear of getting squashed. Like there's a lot of different kind of, I think, causes behind that hesitancy. But as a grandmaster, as someone in that leadership role, how do you try to work with your brothers, whether it's your team of district deputies, your Grand Lodge team, or individual Masons at the lodge level? How do you try to work with them and lead them in such a way that they can overcome that hesitancy and be willing to take a risk and try something new?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's a pretty basic answer as far as where to start with some of this stuff is I have a very tight-knit core group of guys, our team, as we call it. I have the larger team, which is all the district deputies, all the Grand Lodge officers, everything. But as you can imagine, I have 150 district deputies. So you can't get that many opinions, right? So I have a smaller group of guys, 5 to 10 guys that I bounce different ideas off of. If that core group can agree that, hey, this is a decent idea, or at least, if it doesn't work, it's not going to be the end of the world. If I can get that core group to agree on it, then it's probably something we should move forward with. And there's been stuff that I thought it was a great idea. I was all pumped up about it. My team was like, absolutely not, don't do it. So, listening for that feedback, but having those type deals, having kind of that inner group that you go to bounce the ideas off of first, get those guys in agreement. And in a lot of cases, get them excited about it because they're going to be the ones that go out and get the rest of the team excited about it, which gets the rest of the grand jurisdiction excited about it. I've got to have their not approval, but I've got to have their buy-in to the process because without it, I'm not moving forward, if that makes any sense.
It does. I think buy-in is one of those terms that that's kind of a catch-all term that's so important to growing the craft, right? Because there's so many different types of buy-ins that any organization needs to grow. You need your buy-in from your membership, obviously. That's probably the first and foremost, or buy-in from even, moving more general. You need your buy-in from your team. Then you need your buy-in from the larger membership. You also need to have buy-in from the community to have them want to have a Masonic Lodge there. Buy-in from local government, national government, state government when it comes to things like holding events, right? I'm sure there's a lot of coordination, for example, between the Grand Lodge and everybody in Texas is going to hate me. The Alamos in San Antonio, right?
That is correct.
There you go.
Boom.
So, just even that, like, what was it like getting buy-in for that procession? Because with the community and with City Hall in San Antonio, because I'm imagining, 960 Masons, I think you said, traveling down the road.
Yep.
You're going to have to close off some streets. You're going to have to work with local officials. What was that process like? Because one of my personal projects has been trying to encourage Masons in Ontario to form closer relationships with their local city council, city governments, whether it be to look at things like funding for programs or heritage status or events. You need that connection between the community, the government, and the Masons.
Well, luckily, I have like I said, I have an extensive team. And so Tony Kimball, who's my district deputy in San Antonio, already had a lot of those connections. We already visit the Alamo every year. So I wasn't doing anything really out of the norm there, but we knew we were going to have a bigger crowd. So probably 2-3 years ago, we have officer leadership training, which is where it's only about 20% of the lodges, which we wish it was more. They come to basically a weekend retreat where they're taught, all kinds of skills on how to lead. Normally it's the, senior deacon and junior warden. Sometimes it's the, soon to be incoming master of the lodge. But it's always usually an officer, not just a member, that's coming to those. So I started 2 or 3 years before I started talking this thing up, and I threw out the challenge of having 1,000 Masons at the Alamo, and everybody thought I was crazy. I kind of thought I was crazy, and we just talked it up and talked it up and talked it up. As we got closer, we realized that literally everybody I talked to, hey, I can't make this or I can't be at that, but I'll see you at the Alamo. And it happened frighteningly. It was like every conversation I had was, I'll see you at the Alamo. And so then I was pretty sure it was going to be, a bigger event. I was thinking maybe 300, 400 people. But I'd thrown out this crazy idea of 1,000. We get there like 4 hours early and there's already 200 people there, and they're milling about. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be good. So luckily, again, like I said, I had this extensive team. We had so many guys that were in San Antonio PD that, started figuring out, hey, this is going to be a big event. They started calling their friends. We got the streets blocked off. They already knew the route that we were going to take. So it was kind of minimal on our side as far as dealing with the city and the officials. But they already knew we were going to be there. We've done this many, many times. They just didn't realize, I don't think, the magnitude of where we ended up. And by the way, we marched with 960 guys. When we got to the plaza, it was already full, and we assumed there were at least 40 Masons there. So we're going to say that we hit our goal of 1,000 for this year. That's what I'm saying anyways. So
I go with it. I say go with that.
The pictures would lean towards, yes, we hit our goal. So
what was I mean, I don't know if you would have any way to know, but the numbers in terms of local, by which I mean like San Antonio Masons versus Masons coming in from other towns, even other states. I mean, I don't know. San Antonio is not too far from Louisiana, I don't think. Did you have a lot of visitors coming in from out of town?
Absolutely. So, and we did things to accommodate those guys. So for instance, this is always at meet up at 8, and then we'd march to the Alamo at 9. And usually that's done because this is early March and it could be 105 in the afternoon. We took a risk and we moved it back to 1 o'clock for that exact purpose. There were guys that maybe couldn't afford the hotel the night before, because this is the actual weekend. We always do it Saturday closest to the day that the Alamo fell. And so there's always a ton of tourists in town. It's impossible to get a room. We really had to, make sure that we had blocks of rooms at different hotels that people could go to. But we moved that time back specifically to allow people from out of town. Still to this day, last night I was in Temple, Texas, which is in between Waco and Austin. So probably about 3 hours from San Antonio, maybe 2.5 hours from San Antonio. And there were guys there that said, I haven't seen you since the Alamo. So we had guys traveling from as far north as DFW, which is 4.5 hours. We had guys from El Paso. We actually even had the sitting Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Indiana, who came down to march with us in this epic march to the Alamo. So it was quite the event, something that will always be on my highlight reel as far as this year is concerned. And going back to what we were talking about earlier, when you talk about making an impact in the community, San Antonio, we put it back on the map, if it wasn't already, to say the Masons are here 100%. They are alive and well, and they're doing great things. So,
and you talk about an impact, something I've brought up with other Masons in the past. There's different types of impacts, but one impact that I think is sometimes overlooked and shouldn't be, because it should be treated more as a feather in our cap, right, is the economic impact of Masons in a community, especially these larger events, like you mentioned, right, blocking off or reserving blocks of hotel rooms, right? It's 960 plus the 40, 1,000 Masons. 1,000 Masons coming down to an event is what, at least 500 hotel rooms. It's dinners, it's lunches, it's restaurants. It's an important part of it's another way that Masons support the community, right? I think sometimes that gets overlooked. Like that's a big deal for Santa, especially coming off of COVID and having kind of tourism and those industries really suffer. I think that's a wonderful thing to see. Just the benefits that hosting a Masonic event, even a Masonic lodge, right? You're ordering food if you're the junior warden, you're bringing stuff in. You can help local businesses in your community, and when you're doing it, don't forget to mention who's doing it, right? We're ordering dinner for the Masonic Lodge type of thing. I just think that far too often gets overlooked, but it's such an important part of what we do.
So we have visitors bureaus down here in every town in Texas, and we've worked with a lot of them. Said, hey, this is what we're going to bring. This is the amount of rooms we're going to need. This is the amount of meals that we'll consume. What can you guys do to work with? So we do that more in the smaller towns. So like San Antonio is such a massive city. They have these big conventions come in all the time. Dallas is the same way. Houston is the same way. Austin, same thing. So they kind of gets lost in the shuffle in those bigger cities. But when we go to a community like Gonzales, when we go to Goliad, when we go to, a small town to do an event, we were just recently in El Paso. It's not a small town, but it's not one of these major metropolitan areas. Our presence there is more felt. And so absolutely, we try to encourage that. And we try to utilize, every connection that we can, not just to let the community know that we're there, but to make sure that we have the best event possible for the Masons that are coming in. One of the things I recently talked about, I did, I guess it was a seminar for Shriners International, was we do all this stuff to prepare for the event. We do all this stuff during the event. Don't forget to post promote the event, because I want everybody that wasn't at that event to see the picture and be like, oh, I knew I should have gotten off the couch and gone down there to that event, but I didn't. And now I'm going to be kicking myself, because will we ever have 1,000 Masons at the Alamo again? I don't know. Will we ever do a procession in Gonzales again? I don't know. And we want them to say, dang, I missed it. I call it the culture of the fear of missing out, FOMO, which is I think that's a common term around, guys maybe our age. The older guys are like, what the heck are you talking about? But I want them to have that serious FOMO. And some of the events where, our core team, I don't get everybody there. I'll call up the guys that weren't there afterwards and say, all right, scale of 1 to 10, where's your FOMO factor? And they're like, oh man, it was like a 12. I wish I could have been there. That's what we've got to create within Freemasonry, because one of the cool things is I'm seeing guys travel more. I'm seeing guys go more around the state. It's harder to do in Texas because it's literally 4.5 hours to San Antonio, 4.5 hours to Houston from where I'm at. And if you're over in the west part of the state, it's even further. I could drive, I think it's 8.5, 9 hours to El Paso. I always fly because it's crazy. But even with being spread out so far across the state, we're seeing there's a core group of guys that are really getting into this traveling and coming to things, particularly when they're events that are that they deem worthy for travel.
Well, I mean, I guess it applies for all stages of promotion, whether it's promoting the event or post promoting the event, or even during the event, right? Another one of those. It's not a new thing exactly. It is a new thing Masonically, right? The use of social media, the use of whether it be Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, like take your pick, right? Some of those new ones I don't even know about, Snapchat, whatever they all are, right? Like that is, we're slowly, I think, in Ontario picking up the pace on it. In other jurisdictions, they seem even slower. Some have been quicker to adopt it. I would say California seems like it's probably been the quickest jurisdiction to adopt the use of social media. And they've done a great job at it. I think California is kind of could be used as a good template in terms of how social media can be utilized. What is, I mean, I can speak for myself, some of the events I've covered in Texas, I've discovered through social media, through the Texas Facebook page, some through your website and the calendar. as the Grand Master, what has your approach been towards social media and leveraging social media for Masonic purposes?
Yeah, so I started, let's see, 6 years ago almost, where when I was going to make myself available. We can't campaign actively here in Texas. We can make ourselves available, which means you go around, you meet people, and you can tell them individually. You can't make some big announcement and then beat people up to vote for you. So I was starting this traveling around, and I was trying to use social media as much as possible, mainly Facebook, because that's where, as far as Texas is concerned, that is where the majority of our members, they have a Facebook. Instagram is growing. Twitter was kind of moving up for a while, and now it seems like it might be on the downhill slide as far as our membership utilizing it. So Facebook's always been king for us, marketing internally. And so as I was going around, I would just post pictures of the lodge I was at, post pictures of the guys that I was meeting with, post pictures of, the cool, interesting artifacts around the lodge. And I think that had a big part with why I am here today, because people would see that and they were kind of on this journey with me, which was really cool. So we try to keep that flowing into this year. And one of the things I did, probably the first one ever in Texas, if I were guessing, is put together a social media calendar. We had, we will on this date put out this graphic with this, or this meme, or, and it was everything from series. So like the Alamo, 13 days before the Alamo, because the Alamo was besieged for 13 days. We started putting out a post every single day leading up to the Alamo, because we wanted that excitement to build. And if you were on the fence, we wanted to, knock you over to our side and say, come on, you can't miss this. So everything from real serious and historical stuff all the way to, I remember Groundhog Day. I'm holding up this Buc-ee's, which is a kind of a motto for one of our ginormous gas stations down here. I'm holding up a Buc-ee's, Buc-ee with a top hat and an overcoat, and that got more likes than probably anything else we did this year. So we did everything just to promote Masonry online. The goal was not just to get our events and get our agenda out there, but also to have those guys take it and share it on their Facebook page, so that someone that's not a Mason might see it and say, oh, I didn't know you were a Mason. How do I get involved with that? And I think that has had a trickle down effect from the very beginning. So we've really heavily tried to use it. We use Instagram a little bit. We're still kind of dipping our toe into that. And we really haven't used Twitter. We do have a Snapchat and a TikTok, but that's mainly so that other people can't pirate it and take it away and, push Illuminati stuff and all that crazy stuff they try to do. So, but yeah, we've really tried to utilize it. I think it has been successful. And I think it gives the members that aren't there this feeling of, they're still on the journey with us. They still get to be a part of it in some way. And then whenever the opportunity comes that they can be with us, they tend to join because they don't feel like they've been sitting on sideline for 3-4 months. They feel like they've been part of it all the way up, all the way around. So real quick, just to kind of wrap that up, it's twofold for me. It's promotion internally, which is primarily what we use it for and have used it for a long, long time. But it's promotion externally, and that's what I feel like we have to get better at. You don't want to join something that you don't know what it is or what it's about. But if you see awesome events going on over and over and over again, and you keep thinking, man, that looks cool and that kind of looks fun, eventually you're going to say, okay, I gotta get into this. This looks like a good deal. And that's the ultimate thing that we're trying to do with social media right now. And I would say we're, probably a D-, but we're trending in a positive direction. So,
the idea of promotion, well, specifically external promotion, but you need both for sure, right? Because it's easy for a Mason to, if he hasn't been to lodge for a few years, to kind of, if you don't find a way to approach him through social media, through whatever it is, he can kind of get lost in the ether. But the external promotion of the craft is something that interests me in terms of kind of what is being promoted or why the promotion is taking place. I mean, one of my things I've tried to emphasize, and this has just been my opinion, is, instead of promoting for membership, promote for relevance. So, for example, we're here at the Windsor Masonic Temple. It's been around for 100 years. There are a ton of people who have memories and a history with this building that is nothing to do with Freemasonry per se. It's where they came for a high school dance. It's where they met their wife. It's where they met their husband. It's where they got married because their parents got married here, because their grandparents got married here. It's where they saw a concert. You see the same thing with like Detroit, probably most famous, right?
Yeah.
Jack White, right, of the White Stripes, had his first gigs at the Detroit Masonic Temple. His mom worked there and was able to put food on the table because of that building.
Right.
And I remember early on, some people were saying, like, why are you promoting these stories? You should just be promoting stories about, don't do, if a lady, say an older woman sends in a story about when she met her husband at a dance at the temple in the 50s, don't promote that, because who cares? You should just promote, the story of the young man joining Freemasonry. But my response has always been, and Freemasonry is relevant to everybody in different ways. And if you start by reminding people why Freemasonry is relevant, eventually you'll get a group that wants to join. It would be a bit like musicians only promoting themselves to other musicians. Promote yourself to everybody, make yourself relevant to everybody. A percentage of that everybody will become musicians, type of thing, right?
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so I was just gonna say, I think I've when it comes to external promotion, I've been trying to promote the idea of talk about why you're relevant, and the membership will come, as opposed to a focus on encouraging people to consider joining, or a focus on encouraging people to consider membership. Just talk about your importance, your relevance. People will come.
Yeah, I think so. First of all, you mentioned Detroit Masonic Temple. I got to shout out to Corey Curtis, my boy over there. Awesome guy doing awesome stuff. Always a pleasure to be around. So I had to toss that out there since you mentioned it. I think there's a couple of things at play here. A lot of the old hats here in Texas, they don't like the word promotion because they think I'm like, hey, will you join? And you can't be that direct. We have specific protocols. Never ask somebody to join. If they're interested, they have to ask and want to be a part of it. But what you're alluding to is they have to know about it, and they have to know that they want to be a part of it to even ask the question. So that does take external promotion. And we've always had that. It just used to be such a known thing of who the Masons were and what they did, and their events were epic and everybody wanted to be a part of it, that they didn't have to really, work on the promotion side of things. Well, I think after, however many years of decline, we're starting to realize, at least I am and my team, that, hey, you've got to do a little bit of promotion on that side. And to your point, it's not just about, we can promote internally to ourselves all the time, but we're already Masons. Maybe our sons, our legacies will be someday, we don't know, but we've got to appeal to a wider area. And I think, in general, what you're talking about is the community. It doesn't matter why they're in our building, get them into our buildings, get them to understand a little bit about what Masonry is. And then through that connection, they'll either want to join, or if it's a mom or something, she might encourage her son to join, whatever the case may be. A few things that we've done on this exact topic this year is every year we do an Eagle Scout letter. So you become an Eagle Scout, someone sends in your name, they send you a form letter with my signature on it, and congratulations on becoming an Eagle Scout. Well, that's great, and at least we do something. But this year I said, okay, well, what can we do more? These Eagle Scouts, they've got the exact same skill set. They have the exact same morals that we're looking for in Masons. And in fact, there's a pretty high correlation, at least here in Texas, between Eagle Scouts and Masons. So how do we get that young man, or I guess woman now, how do we get them and their families into our lodges? So we wrote up a short ceremony. It's 15 minutes. It's very much based on the shared values of Masonry and Eagle Scout. And what we do is, prior to a stated meeting, so it doesn't take up another night, it's on the same night. You don't have to cook another meal because you're already cooking for stated meeting. But 15 minutes prior to whenever that meal was, say it's 6:30, so 6:15, you're going to go to the lodge. You're going to perform the short ceremony, which is, I think, impactful and meaningful on this candidate. But not just him. You're going to have his family there. You're going to have his troop there. And then whenever you're done with the ceremony, you present him with a very nice certificate and a lapel pin, which is not a Masonic pin. It's a Texas flag for us with an eagle on it. And it's symbolic, but it's something that, as he transitions from a kid to manhood, he's going to maybe have use of this lapel pin on his coat jacket or whatever. And so the idea is to get people into the lodge, see this, realize that there are shared values here, that maybe even if that kid doesn't join, someone in his family might join, or someone in his troop might be impressed and join down the line. We have to do more and more and more of that type of stuff. It used to be, when we had tight-knit communities, people would see it all the time. They would see what the Masons do. Now that we're so spread out and everything's online, people don't see that. So we have to look for active opportunities to promote ourselves that way. The other one was, and we just did one last night, was a Veterans Day program. And we created a Texas Freemason Veterans Pin. And we put together a short ceremony. The National Sojourners have a very good one, but they're not everywhere in the state of Texas. So we put together kind of our own, lodge of military tribute is what they call theirs. We put one together that's similar. And last night we had a joint deal between Sojourners and the lodge. And we put it on. We had 36 veterans there. And it's not just the veterans, it's their family that comes with them. Same type thing. It's the family that comes with them. It's the veterans that aren't Masons that come with them. Those are the people, as we're honoring this group that we have shared values with, that we're trying to show that to everyone else and maybe get them interested or involved in what we do. So
before we go any further, you mentioned the Eagle Scout, the letters. One thing I'd like to bring up when I can, because I think it's a neat idea, and because it was my idea, so I'm going to take credit for it. Which I don't know if Texas wants to do. I mean, anybody can do it. It's not, it's one of those things. You just need a secretary who or you need a lodge, a person who's willing to take responsibility for it. But in my mother lodge, Windsor Lodge 403, we have this, this tradition where every entered apprentice, before he receives his third degree, he has to write a letter to himself. And the letter is placed in a sealed envelope with his name on it and the date of his 25th anniversary into the craft. And then he has to provide that letter back to the lodge before he gets his third degree. And then the lodge basically keeps that letter in a safe location. And then when he receives his 25-year pin, I'm assuming Texas has 25-year pins as well.
Of course.
Okay, so when he receives a 25-year pin, he receives the letter back at that time. And it remains sealed for the entirety of the 25 years. If he were to say, take a demit and join a different lodge, the letter is sent to his new secretary with information as to what it is and the purpose behind it. Or, knock on wood, if he ever were to pass away, the letter's just given back to his family, but it remains sealed. Anyways, whenever people bring up letters, I like to bring that up because I think it's a cool idea.
What if they don't advance beyond entered apprentice, out of curiosity?
If they stay as entered apprentice, they can still provide the letter, right? The idea is before they get their third, they have to provide the letter.
Okay,
so in theory, they could, stay, because it's meant as the 25th year of their initiation into the craft. So that's just an interesting thought. I started at the program in 2015 when I was Worship Master the first time. So our first letter is scheduled to be opened in 2040. So it's just kind of sitting there in a safe location in a cabinet. And then, I don't know if you can have a preemptive Masonic highlight, but I suspect my highlight would be the first of those letters being returned to at that point, the 25-year Mason.
No, that'd be great. My mind immediately went to the entered apprentice. You have them do it. And then as they, know that we're getting closer, if they never advance, and send them, say, hey, we got your letter, kind of as a carrot to dangle out in front of them years later to say, come back, get active, do what you said you were going to do. I don't
No,
know.
yeah, absolutely. That I mean, it does. It kind of hopefully it keeps the craft in mind for them. I mean, I don't know if people remember what they wrote in their letters because it's been 7 years since the first one was written, but
Right.
maybe it's the kind of and obviously, because the letter's sealed, it can say whatever. It doesn't have to be about Freemasonry. It can be about wherever they are in their lives at that moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that is just something for the lodges out there to consider wherever you are. You just need a place in your building where you're comfortable keeping the letters, so they're not going to be damaged. And if your lodge doesn't want to do it, there's nothing stopping an individual from doing it if they wanted to,
Mm,
and just keep the letter themselves.
very nice.
And that brings up something. You took a trip to Scotland, Europe. You've been very well traveled within the state, and some brothers told me very well traveled outside of the state, outside of the country, outside of the continent. When you're traveling and you're visiting other lodges, are you looking for kind of what they're doing, what's working in their lodge, and trying to think how can this be implemented in Texas?
To a certain degree, yes. So the way it works in Texas is you're elected Grand Junior Warden, and yes, that's how we say it. I know 90% of the lodges say Junior Grand Warden, but we say Grand Junior Warden. And then unless there's some major mix-up, you're going to go from Grand Junior Warden to Grand Senior Warden to Deputy Grand Master to Grand Master. Those first 3 years of the 3 years where you're really planning. And so when I traveled in every year leading up to this year, I had more of an emphasis on that, just because there was still time to implement, to change plans, stuff like that. When you hit year 4 and you're installed as Grand Master in Texas, every weekend, I mean, I've had one weekend off this entire year, and that was my wife's birthday weekend, which was essential. But every weekend I'm somewhere. And then during the week, I'm going to 2 or 3 different events, just because we have over 750 lodges. So even if I went to an event every single night, I couldn't hit all the lodges in Texas, which is why I have 150 district deputies. So it's this massive state and this massive thing. When I got installed as Grand Master, you really can't add anything to the plate for that year. Now, do I still listen and look for things that are working? Absolutely, because my goal after this year is to be a mentor when asked, hey, what do you think about this? Or do you have an idea around that? My goal is to try to improve the Grand Lodge of Texas in any way I possibly can. Just because I'm not the Grand Master doesn't mean that I'm going to stop that. So I still have lists in my phone. I still stockpile ideas for other leadership opportunities that are out there, for my friends that are coming up in the York Rite and stuff like that. I take all these ideas and boil them down. So I'm always, and I think all of us should always be looking for how to make the craft better. And if somebody does something and it works, why wouldn't we copy that? It may not make sense for Texas. There's a big divide between urban and rural. And I know that because I'm from a very, very rural area. And now I live in a very urban area. And some of the stuff that we do here, I know for a fact would not even come close to working where I'm from. So there's that divide. And that might be from state to state. You might see some of that. But to find great ideas and to bring them in, absolutely. And so one of the things we did this year, North Carolina, Sean Bradshaw, Ben Wallace, all those guys out there, they have this fantastic program called the Middle Chamber. Very, very esoteric. I mean, it is, for me, the kind of the pinnacle of esotericism in Freemasonry right now, as far as a program that you could take and replicate. And so we brought it to Texas this year. We said, hey, we want to do this. What do we have to do? It took some finagling, and we had it in Waco. We had, I can't remember, a little over 100 brothers there, I think, that came down for it. And there were guys literally walking up to me saying, this is what I've been looking for Masonry in my 30 or 40 year career, and I've never found it until today. Again, it's not for everybody, but it was 100% for some of those people. And so looking for those great ideas, stealing them or replicating them where you can. Why wouldn't we want to do that? I guess maybe your pride could say I could come up with something better. Maybe some people have that. I thought, hey, this is a great program. They're going to come put it on. All I got to do is pick a date, get a venue, and get some meals and some hotels. Easy. And it was literally one of the best events we've had all year long.
Well, good poets borrow, great poets steal, as the quote goes. I really, really like what you said at the start of your answer. I think that there's a very important lesson in there that, like worshipful brother Igor Strukin, one of my best friends in the craft, um, this is his advice to incoming worshipful masters when they are in the senior warden's chair, even whenever they get to the warden spot, even the junior warden spot. His advice is always basically exactly what you said. It's travel and visit as much as you can,
Yeah.
because you're going to be so busy in your year as master. You know, you're when you're a warden, that's the time to start to travel and gather the ideas and the contacts, so then you can implement them as your master. But don't wait till you're in the east, till you're in the master's chair, to start trying to plan or looking for new ideas. Get those ideas when you're a junior warden, get those ideas when you're a senior warden, and then implement them as worshipful masters. So taking the time even in Lodge, when you get that warden spot and the East is coming up, that's when you need to travel. That's when you need to start visiting other lodges, seeing what they're doing, and thinking about how you can apply that to your lodge.
Absolutely. And, it's, if you want to have the best experience Masonically, and I don't care where you're at, I don't care if you're in the officer line or not, travel. Every lodge is great, and every lodge has its, idiosyncrasies and its own, way of going about things. But one of the coolest things is to travel around the world and realize that we do things the same, but we do them different. And how we do those things differences, the nuances in between. That's one of the coolest things for me about Masonry. But the great ideas that come out of it, the opportunity to meet new guys. The other thing, yeah, you're going to find stuff that you can take and implement into your lodge when you're master. But just think about the other guys that you meet that are in the same chair as you, or they're in the same situation. You can bounce ideas off of them. You can go to them whenever you need support. You can bounce, like I was saying earlier, you say, hey, do you think this would work in a lodge? I have this crazy idea. What do you think? Having that support system, having that network, I guess is a very good Masonic word, as you kind of move through, it's essential. If you really want to give it your best shot, if you want to do it justice, you've got to travel. You've got to see what others are doing. You've got to have a fairly open mind, because some of the things that I thought would work as a younger Mason, I found out didn't work. And you can't get too caught up in your ideas, because there's 100 other ones that'll work better or will be more appropriate for certain situations. So just keep an open mind, travel, enjoy, and we're here to learn, and that's part of that learning process. It's just getting out there and being active and seeing different things.
Travel is such a major part of it. I mean, of my Masonic highlights, so much of it is wrapped up in travel. Gonzalez is a highlight. The year before, being in the Dallas-Fort Worth area is a highlight. Hearing the ritual in a different language, not a lot of brothers get to do that, and it's amazing when you do. So that's a major piece of advice. That's what Worship Brother Strukin always promotes and always advises. And I think it's just such an important thing. Travel as much as you can, as often as you can.
So you just hit on something that's been a very friend of mine lately. We had a degree team come over from Louisiana where they practice the Scottish Rite entered apprentice degree. They have Scottish Rite ritual over there. They came over, they did the entered apprentice degree. I was the candidate. I probably wouldn't do that again. No, it was great. But it was very symbolic. Again, kind of that servant leadership as Grand Master going through the entered apprentice degree. That was very humbling and it was interesting. But I bring that up to say 2 weeks later, I was in El Paso. And I'd never, my mind did not connect these two things. It was just straight divine providence how this worked out. So we went from that in far East Texas, and we had the Louisiana guys come over, and I got to witness that degree. I got to physically participate in that degree. And then 2 weeks later, we're in El Paso, and we go over to Ciudad Juarez, right across the border, with the Confederation of Regular Grand Lodges in Mexico. And they do a double entered apprentice degree. and it's based off the same ritual. And so as I'm seeing it, even though I'm hearing it in a different language, I know what's going on. I know exactly what they're doing. I don't know specifically what the words say, but I know what each part represents and what they're doing. And so that was a really unique opportunity to hear it in a different language, but to still have just recently seen it and understand what they were doing. Had I not been to that entered apprentice degree in Longview, Texas, I don't think I would have understood half of what was going on in the degree in Mexico. But it was just divine providence how that worked out. And those two things were literally back to back on my schedule. And I never made the connection in my own mind, but there was a greater plan out there. So I got to hear it in a foreign language, but I got to understand it as someone who had just been through it. It was a really unique experience.
Yeah, I've been lucky enough as well to visit lodges in Mexico. Puerto Vallarta, through the Grand Lodge of Washington, Cameron Bailey, past Grand Master, organizes trips down there every year, Masonic trips. So yeah, it was great. I mean, and same thing hearing the ritual in Spanish. Yeah, and hopefully, as my Masonic career advances, I can hear the ritual in a few more languages. Is the goal for sure.
Go to
Yeah,
DC. They have all kinds of stuff over there. You can hear it.
I've never been to DC.
They have a lodge, as Jeremy Barnes has told me. I've never been to it. Jeremy Barnes of Amity. There's a lodge where they open and it has like 7 different languages in it or something to that effect. So that would be something awesome and interesting to sit in on. Maybe add that to the bucket list as a past Grand Master or something I could attend. So
nice. It's on my bucket list now as well. That's for sure. That would be very cool. I've been close. I've been to Philadelphia, like the whole tri-state area. I've been in that part of the world. I think DC is not too far from it.
yeah.
It's so funny, the East Coast of the States. Like once you're outside of New York, it's like, you drive 5 hours, you're in 5 different states. You compare that to Texas, you drive 5 hours, you're still in Texas. Same thing with Ontario.
People are like, you can drive like 12 hours and go from Texas and still be in Texas. I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
People just have no idea. You look on a map and something that's that far apart is 3.5 hours. So they're like, oh, it's right next to it. No, definitely not. Definitely not. So,
well, I mean, and that I think goes to just how much work it is to be the Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Texas, or for that matter, Grand Lodge of Canada and the province of Ontario. These bigger jurisdictions, whether it's a state, whether it's a province, getting, like you said, every weekend you're traveling, you're somewhere. I think it's just impressive. I think it's just impressive to see the amount of work that goes into it. And I got to see it firsthand in Gonzales, which was terrific. I got to see it last year when I visited the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I do think a lot of the work that Texas is doing, and I will say, when I was in Gonzales, a lot of brothers mentioned you as somebody you need to talk to, and the work that you're doing. I think it's a credit to the craft. And I mentioned brothers should be looking at California for the social media aspect of it, because they've done an amazing job. But in terms of the travel and some of the events that have been putting on, Texas keeps coming on my radar as a place brothers should look to for the hard work. So thank you for that, because it's wonderful. I knew about, even I didn't visit in person, people were telling me about the Alamo, because it was such a well event. Even all the way in Ontario, people were like, you're looking for events to cover. They just had an amazing thing happen in Texas at the Alamo. So just well done to you, well done to your team. I think you guys deserve a lot of credit for that work.
Well, it's the trestle board, right? And you lay it out and try to tweak and add everything that we can to it. But, and who knows, maybe because you heard about the Alamo, maybe that's what got you to Gonzales, and again, you'll never know. Even the people that decide to come to it, they may not know, because maybe it was subconscious. You heard about it. You said, okay, I need to make one of those events, and you find one that works. We never know what it is, internally and externally, as we kind of try to market is not the appropriate word, but show who we are to people who are not Masons. And it's all about just having those great events. I tell people, and I've told people all year long, I planned events that I want to go to and events that I think will be fun, not because it's all about me, but because if I plan events that I think are going to be cool and fun, other people will probably think, hey, this is cool and fun as well. You know, rather than, oh, I have to do this or I have to go to that. I looked at, okay, how do we make it fun? How do we make it something that people want to be at? And that's how we approached the calendar this year.
The Yeah, and I gotta to run now because I'm here volunteering at the, or I will be soon at the Scottish Rite Learning Center.
Excellent.
But I just wanted to say again, like, thank you for to you, to all the Masons. Thank you for your hospitality. I had an amazing time in Gonzales. Um, you know, I've always heard Texas as being a very hospitable state, and certainly the Masons, if nothing else, showed that to be the case. It was a great time, and thank you for that. And thank you for all the work you're doing for our craft. You know, everybody told me about all the work you're putting into it, and it's been great to see.
Uh, I just enjoy it. And, you know, when you enjoy it, it's something that you want to do more of. So thank you for coming down. We hope that that will not be your only visit to Texas. And, you know, we hope to inspire people through your efforts here and you helping us get the word out to bring more people into Texas to enjoy it. And I look forward to visiting their state as well.